This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Good show today. The one and only Mike McClelland joins us. There's probably like 8 guys who have been on BTL from the very beginning, like consistently. Like we had KVD on last week to kick things off in 2025. He was the first guest on BTL, but then we'll go a couple years. But a guy we have on several times a year, a good friend of Mark Jeffries dating way back in the day, Ozark legend Mike McClelland is going to jump in on BTL. Got a lot of other stuff going on in the industry. We have some Toyota, some tournaments that are kicking off. We're less than 20 days away from the Bass Pro Tour kicking off, where we're all going to get to see how this Frankenstein hybrid format works with, the 2 periods with no forward facing, with the period with forward facing. We're a couple weeks away from the Bassmaster Opens Division 1 kicking off out on the East Coast. So it's an exciting time too. Also, a lot of people doing a lot of crappie fishing. Gotten a lot of good feedback of bass anglers who may enjoy learning how to catch some crappie using some bass techniques. So I think you guys have an idea of how this conversation with Mike McClelland is going to go today. And I tried to get, we just schedule wise, Mike travels a ton. He's on the water a ton. He does a lot for his sponsors, and we'll get it a little bit into that. But I think this may take a slightly different direction than you're anticipating. And it wasn't until after I talked with Mike a couple days ago, I was like, oh, that was the whole reason why I wanted to have him on this, because, you go to these media events, you hang out, you're at tournaments, and Mike's got his, I've got my Bucky's cup of coffee here, and Mike will have his mug of sweet tea here. Well, I'll bring it in just to show exactly how it is. There it is, right there. There's your mug of sweet tea. What's up, Mike?
Dude, it's unsweet tea though. Everybody still tries to coin me as drinking sweet tea. It's unsweet tea, 100%. Okay.
So you'll have your mug of unsweet tea, or your tumbler of unsweet tea. What does that say on it? Is that a Peepaw original?
That is actually a Peepaw logo. Yes, that is. Crete coined me with that nickname quite a few years ago, and it stuck.
Do you sell those? Like, is that on MikeMcClellandstore.net?
That's one thing that I have failed to do, Matt, is figure out how to monetize all this Peepaw stuff. Crete and I should have really got into it a long time ago, but it just never came around, man. I guess I'm just so old school that the whole technology, I don't even have a PayPal. I don't have any of that fancy stuff to do things like that with.
Oh yeah. You're just so far behind on technology, aren't you?
Well, in certain cases, you might
just
say
so
that.
far behind on technology. Just a dinosaur. It's all pass you by. This is going to make sense here in a little bit.
Yeah,
this is what I'm excited. You're not bad on branding. So we sat down. So what happens is, jump on 5 minutes beforehand. Hey, how's your video? How's your audio? Good to go. We were wearing the exact same shirt. So I had to go. We both had this exact same Spro branded Aftco quarter zip on, which, so I just organized my closet yesterday. The season started and all that. You go to these things and you get it. I have 13 of those pullovers, Mike.
I don't know that I got quite so many. But they are one of the most comfortable pullovers just to kick around in as anything you'll put on. I think I've got a Spro one, a Beatdown, a Sunline, a Gamakatsu. It's one of those deals. I can dress every day of the week in them.
It is. So just to kick things off, you're getting ready to head on the road here pretty soon for that first Bassmaster Open of the season.
Yes, indeed. Actually packing up. I've spent the last few days, last 4 or 5 days, actually trying to reorganize the garage, trying to prepare, get ready, get everything. You know how it is, Matt. I mean,
Yeah.
the end of the year comes and you think, man, I got all this time to do all these different things that I need to do. And then all of a sudden it catches up with you and you realize I've got to leave next week. And that's kind of where I'm at, which we are starting really early this year. You look at our schedule over the past few years, and I say that we're starting earlier, farther north. And I guess that's the hardest thing to comprehend this year. We've been going to Florida, Texas, somewhere down farther south. And this year, I mean, we're going to middle Georgia or, northern Georgia. And we're liable to see some real cold weather this year.
Absolutely, Clark. So do you you've literally competed under every format in professional fishing that has existed. What are your thoughts on this Division I, Division II, try to make the top 50 out of one of the division, then 0.0 and then 3 EQs at the end of the year with 10 anglers going to the Elite Series? I mean, you're kicking off Division I. I'm only fishing Division II, so I only have 4. You actually have 2 chances. There's a significant number of angler gap in Division I as opposed to a full field in Division II. Last I heard, around 150 in Division I with a cap field at 230. Do you like that format? I mean, that's something that's a little bit different, gives you a little bit of wiggle room, but then also could bring you back to the pack if you do really have a good season.
It definitely has its advantages and I guess disadvantages. I mean, the one thing that I've always liked is the consistency aspect of it. And, when we started the Opens last year, when I jumped back in to try to requalify for the Elites, I thought, man, this is awesome having 9 events. But the one thing that I didn't realize is you can't slip up in one event. And, with this new format with, 4 tournaments leading into a final 3, it's going to be consistency is going to pay, but I don't know how the points will really structure out. The one thing I look back over the course of my career when I was fishing the Elite Series and also fishing the Opens, I always felt like I was relatively consistent. Never just, blew any out of the park. I mean, I won a couple Opens along the way, but it just consistency seemed like it always kind of carried me through. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to that final 3 event, that shootout. And the thing I guess I'm most encouraged about is, man, a lot of the tournaments that I started fishing 30 years ago, a lot of those events were held in the fall. I had a lot of success in the fall. I know times have changed. Technology's changed, as we just talked about a while ago, but fall was always the time of the year that I always excelled a little bit. So I am encouraged about the fact that it's a 3 tournament shootout in the fall to requalify for the Elites. And man, I'm putting everything I got into it this year. I'm getting older. I'm not washed up by any means. I feel like I'm as inspired as ever to continue to fish events. I mean, I fished a ton of events last year and that's always been me. There's a lot of anglers that want to fish just the events that really mean something. But I've always been one of those anglers that wants to get out and fish as many events as I can. I mean, I fished events with my son this year. We did the Golf and Fish Pro-Am just a month or 2 ago at Lake of the Ozarks. I just got to stay busy fishing, man.
What was the biggest difference after so many Elite Series trophies, so many classics, so many title events on the top tour to then going down to where you were fishing the Opens, fishing 4 points? I mean, for so many years, I would imagine as consistent as you were, which what you mentioned, it was not as stressful. I mean, you knew you were going to be on the Elite Series the following season, or you knew you were way up there in the Classic. Was that a different feeling than what you were used to, scrapping for points as the year went on? I mean, was that something you enjoyed, didn't enjoy, cared about, didn't care about?
It really was. And basically I put myself so far in the hole at the very first event last year that I felt like I was scratching and clawing all year long. I mean, I made somewhat of a recovery by the end of the year, but the thing I didn't realize is how far behind or how quick you could get behind in that format. I mean, I think I opened the season up with a 95th or a 98th place finish last year down south in Florida. And man, I was behind the 8 ball all year long. The next couple of events, I started gaining some momentum and, I think I climbed up into the 30s at some point in the year. I think I ended the year in the 30s. And but when you look at the point gap, I mean, there's got to be a lot more consistency. And I realized that this year, Florida's just always one of those places, man. You know how it is. You can catch limit after limit down there. And if you don't get fortunate and get that 1 or 2 good bites, you can get behind. And and that's what happened. I do look at the form or the schedule this year, and I don't know that there's any of those tournaments that, as long as you do your job and catch a limit every day, and get a good bite here and there, I really think the opportunity to stay consistent is going to be better for me this year when I look at the overall schedule.
It is, like you said, it is 9 events, but you had a tough first 2 events, but then that whole middle part of your season, 13th, 60th, 41st, 62nd, 30th. I mean, that's what you need. That's the consistency that you need. And you look at, like one event, and that can really put you behind. Then you start pushing for top 10s and things like that. But
exactly.
This year's schedule, you did mention it. I do want to pull that up here real quick because it starts off at Clarks Hill, Sam Rayburn, Kentucky Lake, Norfolk, Tom Bigby, Upper Chesapeake, St. Lawrence, and then Leech Lake. If you're fishing all of the divisions, I think Bassmaster did a very good job of putting together a diverse schedule through these opens. There's a lot of power fishing. There's some that's straight scope stuff. There's some that can be a mixture of it. And then the 2 divisions, the way that it broke down, if you're more a power fishing guy, Division 1. If you're more an open water electronics guy, Division 2. I think there's a lot of opportunity and diversity to where you're going to see the top 50 guys are going to make it in each of the divisions without really any outliers. You're going to have power fishing guys. You're going to have electronics heavy guys. And then the big thing right now is, I guess we're just keeping September, October, and November open, Mike. Just no plans, no schedules. We have no idea where they are. There's no dates. There's no locations. I mean, heck, we don't have any lives here. Let's just free roll it. I mean, maybe it's one of those deals where they're going to get a big passenger plane and put 120 of us up in the sky and then let us know in September where we're fishing, just like the old Ray Scott days.
I think surely here as the year gets kicked off, they're going to start at least giving us those dates. I mean, that is one concern that, I do have. I mean, we do all have lives. We got things that we've got to plan for. And, I stay busy. I do a little bit of hunting and this, that, the other in the fall too. But that is kind of one of those, I guess, wild cards right now is when are we actually going to start these events and where are they going to be? I mean, I look at it from the case that as late as the Elite Series and as late as the Opens finish, there is a chance that, these events may be more Midwest, South related events in the fall. So it's going to be interesting to see where we actually end up this fall competing for those 9 spots to get back in the Elites.
All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. So are you willing to divulge your general age? Like this is kind of important to the story.
If I really know my general age, I will. But it's I'm either 57 or 58. I believe I just turned 57. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 57.
Right. So I brought you in to I kind of talked about telling stories at media events or standing around the boat while you're holding your unsweetened iced tea. And we were somewhere last year, and you just were chatting, and you said, "Well, I was the first guy to ever win with live scope." We were like, "What?" And you went ahead and told the story, and I've got it pulled up right now, and I think it's very telling now where everyone's saying, "Young guy, you legitimately were." It is documented, and it was on March 5th, 2017. I'm going to pull this up, and then I would like to dig into this whole story because have you ever done an interview on this, like a deep dive into this?
I really haven't, Matt. And, it's one of those deals that I really kind of think slipped under the radar because Panoptics, as it was called in that era, was so new that I think a lot of guys just kind of thought that it really wasn't that big of a deal. And as bad as I hate to say it, it probably influenced me grasping the technology like I should have grasped it because nobody really did seem to think that it was really that big of an earth-shattering deal that I caught these fish using a new technology. I think everybody kind of thought I was just BSing them, but truth of the matter is, and I didn't really know, and I don't know if I said I was the very first. I said I think maybe I could have been one of the first, that utilized forward-facing sonar.
No, you were the first. As far as a major tournament, open level or above, you're the very first. That is the very first documented one, because Jason Christie on Lake St. Clair, although he did not say it, was in August of that same year.
Okay. Well, and, I do remember going to the Classic after that event here at Table Rock, all excited to tell all the folks at Garmin, hey, Panoptics is why I won this tournament. And up until that point, and I think you'll jump in here with me, Matt, the Garmin people were kind of telling us, we don't know how strong this tool really is, but, maybe it will allow you to catch an extra fish in the course of a day, or, maybe you'll see something that you normally wouldn't have thrown at that you throw at. And the thing that happened here at Table Rock that year, man, I was dead set on wanting to catch him on a McStick and a rock crawler that year. And my son Justin he was fishing the Opens that year. He had been up here practicing while I had been off. I forget where I was, but I had some other events going on. In fact, I think I was in Florida fishing Bass Pro Tour events, or no, it wouldn't have been
Bass Pro Tour. Then it would have been 2017.
Maybe we had already started the Elite Series that year.
You had just started. That was the Knoxville on Cherokee Lake, and then Lake Okeechobee.
Okay, so we had been off fishing other events, and I do remember now that you say that at Lake Cherokee, I kind of started seeing the capability of what Live or Panoptics at that time would allow me to do. I caught some fish on a swim bait at Cherokee using Panoptics, and then we went to Florida, and I kind of forgot all about it. Show up here at Table Rock with a limited amount of practice. Man, I cranked for 2 days, threw a jerkbait, caught tons and tons of fish, but to catch 12, 13 pounds was going to be a struggle. And the last day of practice, I was running down the lake, saw a big bunch of seagulls diving out in the middle of the creek, pulled up the creek, dropped the trolling motor, started trolling around, saw a big ball of bait. And I swear to you, this is how it went down. I didn't even pick a bait up. I had a co-angler, one of the Major League officials from the Cups, in the boat with me that wanted to practice with me. And I'm like, hey, you got an underspin tied on? And he's like, yeah, I got this Roadrunner tied on. And I gave him a big bite jointed jerk minnow, had him slip it on there. And I'm like, hey, throw right over there. And I had him throw over at a ball of bait. And I actually saw his bait hit, started falling. I said, start cranking it. And he starts whining, and he catches a 3-pound largemouth. And I'm like, huh. So I start chasing these birds and bait around out in the middle of the creek. And within just a few minutes, I've caught, what looked like could have been, I didn't catch them all, but I saw what looked like could have been 15, 18 pounds of bass. And it was 11 o'clock that morning, and I pulled the trolling motor up, and I said, I'm done. I know what I'm doing. He's like, what do you mean? We got a half a day to practice. And I'm like, I don't need to do anymore. I know what I'm going to do. And I literally spent the next 3 days. My boat never graced water shallower than maybe, the final day I did go crank some just because the conditions changed. But the first 2 days of the event, my boat set in anywhere from 40 to 100 foot. I threw at treetops and bait balls. You couldn't individualize fish with Panoptics, but I knew what I was throwing at and where I was throwing. And fishing, it was unbelievable how easy it was to catch them at that point, because those fish hadn't been exploited yet. Nobody was out there with the capability putting pressure on those fish yet. And it was just pretty incredible how that went down.
Do you remember when they put it on your boat for the first time? I would assume it would have been 2016 then.
Yeah, I started playing around with the technology a little bit in late 2016.
So what was said? How was it installed? How did Garmin introduce it to you guys? What was your understanding of it?
Well, I mean, essentially, it was, I don't even remember if they called it forward. I think they did call it live or forward facing sonar. The explanation was that it allowed us to look ahead of the boat. Things have changed about it. You've got to understand, if you had a picture of Panoptics then versus live scope now, you would just be, it was very.
That's what it is. That's what it was at ICAST in 2017. So this is the second iteration of it. It's amazing how it's like I do this for a living, how I could just pull it up. There's Clark. That's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
But here he is.
Yeah, let's just hear what Clark has to say.
Well, I don't have audio on that right now for his benefit. But here's just an idea of the screen. That's kind of what it looked like originally, right?
Yes, exactly. The thing that it allowed us to do, though, and what the benefit for me was being able to see balls of bait and timber that was out in open water. Those targets that we used to have to idle around for hours and drop waypoints and, throw buoy markers to stay on. Now you were able to utilize a forward-facing technology to throw at those targets before you ever got on top of them. And, I really grasped the technology early. The thing that frustrates me so badly now, and part of it's just my makeup, my upbringing. I still love to catch them traditionally, power fishing. Throwing a crankbait, throwing a stick bait, fishing a jig, and I don't spend the time with forward-facing sonar that I need to compete with this younger generation that has grasped the technology so well.
I want to go back to 2017. So you get this stuff in 2016. So who has it? Was there like a small group of you guys that they used as like a test subjects to where they were like, Clark, Jason, Mike, we're going to put this stuff on your rig. Let us know how it works. What do you remember about it when you get it? Because it was so new. Primarily, I remember the first time I saw it, we always read right to left. And now you've got a graph where you're reading the entire graph, not right to left, which took me a lot of time to be like, what am I looking at? Go back. Like who do you remember were the first ones that were like, hey, we got this new transducer where like, what was there a camp? Did you guys get a talk? Like, were you guys chatting? Like, was there a group message about like, what the hell do we do with this stuff? Because you had to be one of the first 10 professional anglers to have this technology on your boat.
It's pretty crazy when you bring this all up, because I've really never gone into it in any kind of depth like this. But now that you bring this up, I specifically can start remembering things that happened. Wade Middleton was actually the first person that I ever got in the boat with that had the Panoptics technology. We were at and I don't remember if it was a riders. Yeah, it would have been a Cabela's riders conference. We had all the Cabela's buyers. We had all the Cabela's anglers at a lake in Texas. I mean, it was full of bass. They were schooling. And I got in the boat with Wade Middleton. And he's like, you've got to see this. He said, this is like crazy. And we jump in his boat and he pulls up his Panoptics, and, you can see all this activity up on the surface. You couldn't individualize fish, but you could just see lots of activity. And we're throwing, a swim bait and, a variety of baits, topwaters, jerk baits at these fish. And we're catching them, and, and we're both kind of talking about, man, this is pretty cool stuff. But, there's only probably a few times of the year that it's really going to play. And I think that's the biggest thing. I remember when Russ Lane, Jason Christie, I'm trying to think of the guys. Actually, Justin, my son, had the technology a whole year before I did. He actually worked with the engineers in some of the development phases of it, and, saw the different things they could do with it. And so more than anything, Justin has been the one that brought me up to speed on what the capabilities of it were early on. That was in the era where an A-rig was still being allowed to be thrown in a lot of tournaments around the country, and still is. But I remember Justin took me out a few times with an A-rig, and you could see an A-rig on Panoptics plain as day. It wasn't very easy to see a single bait, a jerk bait, a swim bait. It was tougher to see those baits. You could see them, but when you threw an A-rig out there on Panoptics, it was unbelievable, what you could see. And that was probably what opened my eyes up to it the most, was getting in the boat with him, fishing some of those Bella Vista lakes, and just seeing, how fish related to the bait and what you could accomplish with it. I know I'm just kind of, my mind's spinning now here, because I really haven't dug into this for so long. It's pretty crazy to think back to where it all began.
No, I would assume Scott had it too. Scott Martin.
I would assume Scott did. And yeah. There had to have been, because Scott was one of the early Garmin guys. In fact, I remember now we went to a Garmin meeting that fall of 17, and there was a lot of discussion about Panoptics at that point. There were ones of us that were wanting to, there were some guys that wanted to widen the cone. There were other guys. I was one that personally felt like the narrower the cone was, the better it was going to be, because the more precise we could be with the utilization of it. And I think that, it's gone back and forth a couple times, but I think Garmin's got it where it needs to be now. There's no denying that when you look at the capabilities that, I know you've used it a bunch, and the younger generation. And I guess now I'm kind of kicking myself in the tail for letting the cat out of the bag in 17.
All right. Well, we're going to stay in 2017, regardless of how fast you want to fast forward 7 years. So so when would you say, okay, let me just start over here. Was Garmin saying, you guys need to learn this? This is the future. You guys will win every tournament on this. And it was just the slow adaptation of the anglers? Or was it the anglers going, oh my gosh, you guys don't know what you have here. This is it. Or was it a couple guys that said, my God, we cannot tell anybody about this. This will revolutionize. What was that development like? What did they know what they have? Did you know what you had? When did it? Because to me, I remember, so I got it in the end of 18, and I remember going to like some deals, and I'd look around and you'd be like, okay, no one else has this transducer. Mm-hmm. And literally then it would be like, oh man, there's a lot of guys with this and then it was everybody had it. What was that originally like? How did that go down, the realization that this was going to revolutionize fishing?
Well, and Matt, I'll be honest. I still was one of those, again, I've mentioned it a couple times. I wanted to continue fishing traditionally. To me, it was a lot like an Alabama rig. As bad as I hate to say it early on, because I was like, man, once guys catch on to this, it's like everybody's going to be doing this, and you're going to have to be doing it. I didn't realize that it was going to work all year long. Just like, an Alabama rig. I thought an Alabama rig was going to have its couple seasons of the year. But yeah, it was in the beginning. There weren't a lot of guys with the technology, but it didn't take long, like you said, for the anglers to start realizing there really was something to it. I do remember that, especially after Jason won, when I won, there was a couple guys that asked me about it and, kind of, wanted to know what I thought. And I'm like, oh, it's just, really cool. You can do this and this and this. And, my mind was still focused on continuing to fish as I had fished for the last, 12 or 15 years. And when Jason won, and then I think there was another tournament shortly after Jason won that somebody else won, that was when it really started.
Scott Martin in 18 on Cumberland.
Yes, that's when it really, really started sinking in that this was a big deal. I don't think Garmin ever told any of us that, this was the way of the future. And again, even a couple years into Panoptics and LiveScope, the Garmin techs that we dealt with on a daily basis, they're like, they would ask you questions, well, did you feel like, your forward facing sonar helped you? And I'm like, hey, yeah, I saw a brush pile. I did this, but I think we were all still so tuned in to our 2D and our side imaging and just the fact that we had been fishing the way we had for so many years. It was tough for a lot of us to make that transition to where we picked, a rod and reel up and really went out and just started chasing fish in open water. It's, you even look at, Jason's, history with Panoptics and LiveScope. He's had his successes with it and won events with it, but he's also had, some big successes power fishing since then. Mm-hmm. It's just our innate, characteristics that we want to fish the way that we have been brought up to fish. And I know you keep wanting to hold me back, but that's the change in the new generation. This new generation of angler caught on to that forward facing sonar early on. And that is how they got brought up fishing. That's what their mentality is. They didn't go out learning to drag a jig and a Carolina rig around on the bottom to, find hard spots and do all the things that we as an older generation of anglers did.
Okay. So I find it interesting. the anglers that you mentioned who had it early, all power fishermen, but also had wins with it. Why back in 2017, 2018, did you not see the finesse anglers that would get this and say, my God, this fits directly into my game plan? You're seeing guys who want to be on the bank, who want to crank, who want to be hitting something, dragging with a bait, that are winning these events with it. Was it strictly an allegiance to electronics where there were entire, like it was, hey, this guy's with X company and not with Garmin, which had the technology, therefore they didn't see it. And it just so happened that you guys were the group that was with Garmin at that? Why no Brett Heights? Why not Aaron Martins? Why not Brent Ehlers? Why not that group?
Well, and it's interesting that you bring Brett Height into the equation, because I remember, Brett started asking me about the Panoptics fairly early on, because we were traveling together. We had started, kind of camping at the same RV parks and things like that. And, Brett came over to Garmin shortly thereafter. It definitely started opening some eyes. I don't know the answer to that. I think it was allegiances to electronics companies. That group of us that had made the transition from other companies to Garmin, when Garmin, decided to really get into the bass fishing world. I mean, my primary reasoning for wanting to go Garmin when I did was due to their mapping that they were doing. They were doing all of their own proprietary mapping back in that era of 16, 17, 18. And there for a while, Garmin was kicking everybody's tails when it came to mapping. And that was my primary deal, was I want to get on board with Garmin because of mapping. Well, little did I know that, Panoptics was going to lead to a tournament win. In fact, my last tournament win, and, some successes since then. I mean, I've had some successes using forward-facing sonar since then, and it's definitely something I utilize on a regular basis. I think even the thing that, to me, I try to utilize it more in the traditional things I do, my jerkbait fishing, my crankbait fishing. Very seldomly now do I go down a bank throwing a crankbait where I am not throwing my rock crawler or whatever crankbait I'm throwing at a target that I have physically seen on live scope. I'm not just randomly going down a bank cranking anymore. I'm truly looking and hunting for fish all the time now.
Yeah, it also makes sense. So, like, go back to kind of that time frame and before. Like now, there was a very small percentage that was using Garmin at the time. Like, it was vastly. You had seen like Ray Marine come in with their chirp technology, and they kind of went away. And then the Garmin came in, but they didn't have their side imaging or down imaging as dialed in as Hummingbird. Their units weren't as easy to use as far as waypoint management with Lowrance. So there was actually, during that time, it was probably the smallest percentage of professional anglers using Garmin products in 16, 17, and 18.
It was a landslide after that.
That's
Everybody
what I'm saying,
wanted
but
to be
back
on
then,
board.
I think that's why it took maybe so many years, because it wasn't like 70% of the field had Garmin's to start with. Like if it had been a Lowrance or a Hummingbird, Hummingbird, when the 360 came out, you had a couple anglers that really were able to dominate with it. Keith Combs, look at, his retirement fund with the TTBC and stuff, but everybody had it. Everybody knew what it would do within a year like that. I think part of the mystery in it was you had to there weren't as many guys that were just getting it and learning about it.
Yeah, I will agree with that, but it took off too. I know when I started getting back home in the fall of 17, all of the guides and all of the buddies that I had here around Table Rock and on Beaver and, these area lakes were, asking me, they're calling, hey, what is it about this? And again, it goes back to when Jason won the second event and, claimed that he caught him using the forward facing technology. That's when it really kind of sunk into everybody. Hey, there's something to this. And, it wasn't long after that you saw the transition started taking place. There for many years, the good electronics anglers in this area weren't using Garmin. And then after Garmin came with this technology of Panoptics and then live scope and then their side imaging and down view and everything became what it is today, I mean, they dominate the area now, and they dominate a lot of the country, in my opinion, as far as electronics go today. And it is pretty cool to think back now to the fact that, maybe I had a little bit more to do with that learning curve than I even realized I did.
All right. I do want to read the press release where it says it, just to put out a boat. Then we'll take a break, and then we will finally transition into 2025. We'll get back up to the present times. We'll talk about all this different stuff you have going on. But this is a cool article. John Nebrani wrote it. March 5th, 2017. There's just no place like home for Elite Series Pro Mike McClelland. Talks about how you dominate on Table Rock, and then it said this is just mentioned casually. The first 2 days, McClelland had success keeping his boat in 45 to 50 feet of water and throwing a Cabela's 3.4 finesse swimmer swim bait with a 1/4 ounce underspin jig head to bass holding in standing timber in 25 to 32 feet of water. McClelland credited his Garmin Panoptics electronics for helping him see the bass he was catching from the trees. How does that not blow up? Like, literally, how do you not go, wait, what? Like, how did that not blow up then? How did that people just go, oh, cool. He also caught some shallower fish on a Spromic stick bait and a Spro rock crawler crankbait. And then that's the only thing that's mentioned about it. But you're literally in the middle of Table Rock casting the fish you can see over 50 feet of water, 30 feet down with a swim bait. Sound familiar?
It does. And I guess that's it's given me this feeling of excitement right now, because I remember how excited I was about what I had done. But it was like nobody else, even when you told some of the people, as bad as I hate to say this, it was like even the folks at Garmin kind of were like, oh, I think he's just, blowing this out of proportion. I mean, that's almost the feeling I got after the event had taken place. And maybe nobody had just really, truly grasped what it could do and where it was going to go. I don't know, Matt.
Yeah.
It's really.
Hey, let me hit this. Clay goes, guys, pumping his sponsor, nothing to see here. Hopefully he's saying that's back in 2017. Mike had no idea I was going to talk about this on today's show. BTL is not sponsored by any electronics companies. And this has absolutely nothing to do with any current sponsorships whatsoever.
Yeah.
You're still sponsored by Garmin, right? Are you still sponsored by Garmin?
Yeah, no, I'm still with Garmin. And, it's just pretty crazy to look back at where it started and where it's gone.
But I think what Clay might be referring to is back then in 2017, everyone just said, oh, well, of course he's going to credit it. There's this new technology out. He wants to get in with Garmin. Jason Christie's kind of breakdown on that. Here's kind of what it was said about his win with the tube. He said, I could still catch them under clouds, but the bite slowed. He relied heavily on his Garmin electronics throughout the event, so much so that he purposely avoided areas where the sand grass was taller than a foot off the bottom. The west side and south side have a lot of grass that's tall. He said, the sole reason that I ran away from the grass was because of my Panoptics. The grass takes my advantage away of seeing them out there 80 feet from the boat.
Exactly.
That was the playbook. You literally Jason Christie gave the Great Lakes playbook in August of 2017, and you gave all the other playbook in March of 2017.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, just to look back now at where it did start, and there were some guys that had success even before that. I mean, I know Justin had successes in 16 utilizing the technology, before anybody. Actually, he may have been even playing with it in 15. I don't remember exactly when he actually had the opportunity to start utilizing.
I remember he won a tournament.
I can't remember.
No, he won a tournament way back when, and I remember he briefly mentioned that he was power pulled down on a flat and he was scoping with a spook. And when he would watch the fish swim past, he would lead him with the spook and catch them as they swam around this flat and chase shad. And I remember thinking, what?
Like I said, he was a little bit ahead of me.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we'll transition into 2025, what you have going on now. Sponsorship-wise, life-wise, the whole 9 yards. It's BTL. Look at all that. Look at that. There it is right there. That's like doesn't get any better than that.
Got to keep that caffeine going.
That's
man.
like watching Tommy Biffle flip a bush in the spring. Mike McClelland pouring his tea into the cup. BTL on a Monday with Mike McClelland. We'll be back right after this. Pro Bass Adventures is reinventing Mexico bass fishing. With boats equipped with 12-inch Garmin units and LiveScope Plus, free loaner fishing rods, and no-cost airport transportation, Pro Bass Adventures is proudly putting you in the best position for success. Pro Bass Adventures has lodges on Lake Baccarat and Lake El Salto, Mexico's two best trophy largemouth bass lakes. Visit probassadventures.com or email probassadventures@gmail.com. The official Mexico fishing lodge of Bass Talk Live.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
This is Gamakatsu's new Nano Alpha line of hooks. If it looks familiar, that's because they are. It's the same shapes and sizes in the round bend and the EWG and in the new Horizon head that you know and love from Gamakatsu, but there are a couple new features with this Nano Alpha, which is this little green label that you see on the packaging. First off, 2 times faster hook penetration. That's because of the Nano Alpha smooth coating on it, and also it is 4 times more corrosion resistant. Check it out, Nano Alpha.
I've been using Sunline Shooter for the majority of my career. Millions of dollars made, lots of bass caught, and the gnarly stuff. If you need a abrasion resistant, tough fishing line for the really mean stuff, Sunline Shooter is for you.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. SONAR, Strike King. Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFCO. Any fish, any water.
Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, the truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery. Unparalleled weight savings. Keeping you on the water, whether you run a 9.9 or outscoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
All right, welcome back. BTL on a Monday with the one and only Mike McClelland. A couple of ice cream questions during the commercial break.
A little frozen custard, huh?
Andy's still on board in 2025.
Yes.
There were literally 3 questions about it in the instant feedback.
Yeah, we're going to have some Andes as we travel up and down the highway this year. It's it's hard to pass one of them up without stopping and enjoying a treat from there for sure.
Has the role of a professional bass angler in their relationship with sponsors changed drastically over the last 5 years, in your opinion?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it has. There's a lot of anglers that have never really tapped the non-endemic sponsorship world. And, I think that's definitely kept me in a position to allow me to do different things that some of the anglers haven't done. But it has changed across the board, even from, especially in the non-endemic world, Matt. You and I both know, social media has gotten to be so much bigger part of what goes on. YouTube, there's so many things now that an angler has to do. The anglers that are catching them day in, day out are still doing well, and they accomplish what they need to. But if you're not winning, yearly, stay in the forefront of things, you've got to work it from a lot of different angles. And I think that's what we're all finding out, that it has changed.
You by far hold the record for the most vinyl decals on the front deck of a bass boat. Have you ever ran into issues when it's freezing outside? Have you ever slipped on that? Talk about the process of how you put those decals on the front, because I counted no fewer than 26 vinyl decals that are on the front deck of your bass boat. Yes.
It's one of those deals. I mean, that is the portion of our boat that gets seen the most when we get a camera in the boat. And, when you've got people standing around your boat, it's there, it's visible. And no, I've never had any issues. Carrie Short, which she is no longer doing it, but Carrie Short, Kevin Short's wife, actually has been the one that has produced those for myself as well as a number of other anglers. And there's quite a few there. But as far as
that's more than quite a few, Mike.
The grip on them, it's incredible. I mean, it's got a scuffed surface. I've fished a few really nasty days, and I don't guess I've ever had any issues with any slippage, buddy.
No, it's 31.
31. Okay.
31. Do you do that yourself?
I actually do. I grew up in a different world than some people that are professional anglers. I was a painter and a wallpaper hanger. Took architecture through junior high and I should say late junior high and then early in my high school days. And I guess I always had kind of I'm a pretty detailed person, and things like that come pretty naturally. I mean, I feel like I could wrap my own boat, but that's just something I really never even want to attempt.
Yeah, no. So I struggle. I have one small BTL sticker on the back of my truck, and it gives me great anxiety anytime. Like when I put that on, I had a straight level. I mean, it was a big deal just to put the one sticker. I wanted it absolutely. BTL dog in the show. You got to show the pup now.
Dog he slipped in. Yeah, Millie, come here. Come here, Millie. Yeah, this is one of our two. Here, you want to look at the camera? Here's.
Camera shy.
She's camera shy. That is actually Millie is actually Casey Ashley's Golden's offspring. Casey Ashley had his golden bred a buddy of his lab by accident, and we had just lost a dog about the time those puppies came around. Kenzie called my wife and got us hooked up with Millie. She's one of our favorites. There's no denying it.
So that's a half lab, half golden.
Yes, they call them Goldadors. And then we just recently got a new golden last fall because we lost our other old lab, so we had to get Millie some company.
Is that combination as amazing as it sounds?
It really is. She is one of the coolest dogs that I have ever had. And I'm a pet lover. I mean, I hunt some, and it's cool to watch dogs hunt. And, she'll go out in the backyard and act like she's hunting. She'd probably be scared to death of a gun if I ever actually took her hunting. But they are a cool breed, and just, real lovable, but they're real energetic. Now, they are energetic, and they keep Peepaw and Meemaw on their feet, I'll tell you.
Just to close that thought off, my whole point was that I am very good at putting things on crooked. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and getting back to that, I mean, I will say that when I put the decals on the boat, I mean, there are tape measures and levels and straight edges and all kinds of crazy stuff involved. I mean, I eyeball stuff pretty good, but it's going to be on there perfect if I put it on there.
There are a handful of legendary anglers that are fishing the opens right now. How has it been keeping the sponsors going into year 2?
You know, I'm not going to say that there's not been some questions from sponsors about what the overall, you know, goals that I have, I guess, put in front of me, and, you know, what I am going to do in the event that I don't requalify for the elites. That question has come up. I mean, I'm going to talk honestly about that. I am trying to get more involved in other sponsor related things. You and I talked a little bit earlier, and I actually going to start working on a new series of YouTube stuff. I'm going to be working with Spro directly on their YouTube page this year. Kind of, I don't know if you would say I'm the host, but I'm going to kind of take a role as you know, trying to host the Spro YouTube page. We're going to basically take a different approach. You know, it's not going to be getting on the water every day and going and throwing a rock crawler, a McStick, a Little John. It's going to be, you know, what Spro is all about, and just kind of take people through a journey of, you know, where Spro came from and the anglers that are involved with Spro, who they are. So it's going to be introducing, you know, the whole Spro pro staff. We're going to do some unique things. You know, one thing I love to do is I love to trout fish, and a lot of the, I guess you would say, prototyping of my McStick early on was done trout fishing, just due to the time of year that we were trying to get that bait introduced. So, you know, we're going to do some trout fishing trips, and, you know, we're going to do some unique stuff. Hopefully get the opportunity to fish with, you know, Jeremy Lawyer, Michael Neal, John Cruz, Dean Rojas. We're just, as we travel around the country this year, we're going to try to work in, you know, some segments here, there, and across the country, and utilize all the Spro products that we can utilize throughout the year.
And that'll be on Spro's YouTube.
It'll be on their YouTube page, yes.
Do they have a YouTube page yet, or is this how they're kicking it off?
They do. They just have really not worked on building it out, and that is part of the goal. And, you know, that goes back to the question you asked, you know, what do sponsors expect in this day and age? And that's the one thing that they realize, that they need to build their YouTube page out a little bit more thoroughly. And I'm going to get involved and help them do that.
One of the things that Spro has done better, I think, Strike King has done an incredible job at it. Some of the other companies have done, but Spro has done. We're both sponsored by Spro, so there you go. But I'm talking about it because regardless, Spro has done an incredible job of developing the personalities surrounding their signature baits. Incredibly well. Like, you are synonymous with two baits.
And I do, you know, respect the way Spro has done it. I know that a lot of companies do things differently. The one thing that I was really taken back by when I first signed with Spro was how they did things. You know, when they asked me to come on board and help them develop a series of jerk baits, you know, I was just kind of expecting, you know, just give them a little input, and, you know, they're going to build something and I'm going to approve it or test it. And, you know, basically they're like, you know, how do you want it to look? Where do you want the bill placed? Where do you want this done and that done? And I mean, literally the architecture skills that I had came into play, because I literally sat down, sketched, you know, what my vision of that bait was going to be, the features that bait was going to have. And then Spro started working on it. We missed pretty bad the first couple of editions.
Really? I didn't know that. How bad?
Now, when I say that, the prototypes, the bills, we tried to do a square type bill and a coffin style bill, and the bills just did not work. And then when I finally, I literally would take and cut the bills off of the baits they had sent me and make bills out of CD cases and things like that. And when I finally got the right bill and the right bill placement, the right bill shape on the bait, it's like I wrapped it up in, you know, blister wrap and sent it back to them, and like, this is it. And, you know, it wasn't very long after that they produced the first McStick, and it's been history since then.
What year was that? Roundabout?
Man, that would have been 2005 or 6, somewhere in that era.
So I would assume at that time, Lucky Craft dominated the marketplace.
Yeah, and I mean that's the whole thing. I grew up throwing the old Pradco, or was it Pradco,
the Smithwick Rogue?
Smithwick Rogue. So it's Smithwick. Yep. Prior to Pradco buying them, that was the bait I grew up throwing here on the Ozark Lakes, and I like the features of that bait. But as you said, Megabass and Lucky Craft had both stepped into the jerkbait world here in the United States, and so a lot of the features that I wanted to incorporate into my jerkbait were definitely things that those baits had: the weight transfer system, the more realistic look, and essentially I took all the features from all the jerkbaits I had thrown leading up to me developing the McStick, and just kind of meshed all of the things into one bait. My bait swims more like a old Smithwick Rogue from an action standpoint, but it has a lot of characteristics of those overseas jerkbaits, the nose down, the way that it sets in the water and things like that.
It does. It's got the castability of a pointer. Yeah. It's got the attitude of a 110. It's not as sharp. So it's got that old kind of rogue, little bit of chug to it that is interesting. Yeah, so on this YouTube series, then, are you going to be focusing, like, are you going to be getting in the boat with all the guys and as they go through their signature baits? You're going to get out of the comfort zone? Like, have you figured out kind of what the game plan is on that?
That's the thing that's kind of unique about this deal is we're just going to kind of roll with it as the year goes by. I mean, I'm actually hooking up with the writer today, or the videographer today, and we're going to start shooting the first segment right here at the house. No fishing involved today. We're just going to kind of start telling the story of where we're going with this. I think that, it'll be a more in-depth look at things. Like I said, I mean, more of a, what is Spro all about? Where and how does Spro work with their professional anglers? And some of the guys that are designing baits for Spro aren't necessarily in the forefront as far as, on tour fishing. I mean, there's guys that, Kevin with the design the Chad Shad for Spro. I mean, he's an incredibly accomplished angler, but he's not out here fishing the tour level events. So it's pretty unique what Spro, how they've developed their pro staff, and it's going to be cool to get with all these guys and learn more about them and where their bait designs and things have come along.
I had him on the show, designer the Chad Shad, who then went to it, and Sid gave me his number, and Sid said, dude, he goes, you have to let him know that I gave you his number as soon as he answers the phone. So he answers the phone. It's like, hello. And he's a super nice guy. And I said, don't hang up. Sid gave me your number. I don't want anything.
Yeah.
And then he said, oh, okay. And then it was totally good. But he said that, hey, I need a chat, especially when that is still going nuts on that. But that was funny. Yeah. I think you got to take you and Russ and John and Dean, and I want to see how many different species you can catch on your signature series baits.
Well, and that's some of the things that we're kind of looking at is just, what opportunities are out there. And again, we all do it throughout the course of the year. I mean, I've caught walleye and yellow perch, and I think about when I go up north, all the different species that I have caught on a McStick, northern and musky and things of that nature. But it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm still continuing to work with Spro on, new rock crawlers. We got a new McDart, new jerkbait coming out. Hopefully in the next couple of months, we're going to see them hit the United States. So I'm excited about that bait as well.
Cold water crawling is what it's called. And I know those baits came out, last year in 2024. What's that now? Those new colors of the rock crawlers.
Oh yeah. 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 We have got new colors of rock crawlers coming, a lot of new stuff coming.
Is Ghost Orange Crawl one of the new ones?
Yeah. Ghost Orange Crawl was one of the new ones. I've got 6 new colors slated right now to be coming out. We also, Bass Pro Shop did an exclusive series of colors. So for those of you that shop
cool.
at Bass Pro Shop, you can only get, I think there's 6 exclusive colors that Bass Pro has. They did some matte finishes of some of the traditional colors we have. They did some pretty unique, they did a really cool rendition of a red with a real bright orange belly. Some really cool stuff.
Do you have any concept of like what percentage of rock crawlers are bought by guys who are chucking them in derbies versus guys who just like the bait and just throw it for fun?
You know, I'm mad. I almost would have to feel like it's almost 50-50 because I mean, I get, you know, calls and, you know, texts from people that, you know, are just your everyday angler. I mean, it's funny you brought that up. I was just thinking about that earlier. You know, here on Table Rock, I'm 90% sure there have been 3 of the KVD Big Bass Bashes they do here at Table Rock that have been won on either a mixed stick or a rock crawler. I believe it's been won twice on a rock crawler and once on a mixed stick. In fact, Travis Harriman's dad,
I know Travis,
won on a mixed stick one year, and I know for certain I just met the guy that won one of them on a rock crawler just the last couple of years, and I want to say again there was a third one that was won on a rock crawler as well. So you know there are a lot of just your weekend you know more laid back tournament anglers throwing it, but you know there's a lot of the guys that I run into out on tour that throw the bait a lot. I mean it kind of hurts my feelings every now and then when you know, I run into these guys that I'm out there fishing against on the opens that have kicked my butt. In fact, 2 years ago, we were at the Potomac River, and as bad as I hate to say it, the Potomac River is probably a place that I've never even attempted to throw a rock crawler. And one of the young elite or young anglers that was fishing, I think that would have been a Major League Fishing Invitational. He was jumping up and down at the end of the day, so excited to tell me that he had like a 15 or 16 pound bag on a rock crawler on the Potomac River, and he had kicked my tail with my own bait, you know, and I was flipping grass, you know, down in Potomac Creek somewhere. So it's pretty cool to see the diversity of that bait and where all it is being utilized and by what type of anglers are catching them on it.
Joe B, quick question. What's the best? You have one rock crawler, one color for Table Rock Lake, size and color. It's the only one you can throw for the remainder of time.
The original 55 and color, I would have to say day in, day out, if they would only allow me to have one color, it would be Phantom Green. It's just Phantom Green works good in clear water, works good in somewhat of an off-colored water. But yeah, Phantom Green, original 55.
So here's the other, like, you have like a lot of interesting history. So 2011, October, Paul Elias on Gunnersville shows the world what the Alabama rig can do. If you go back to that time, there was a lot of, it's backlash because there's a time where you've got guys like companies like McClelland going, my God, like we have this stuff out like jerk baits. No one will ever buy another jerk bait. Like the jerk bait is dead. The A rig will supplant it whenever it's cold water. Why the hell would you throw a jerk bait when you could just throw the chandelier out and catch fish? That seems to have kind of evolved over time. Then recently the jerk bait becomes the darling of the fishing world. Oh my gosh, we're figuring out these fish will suspend 5 to 10 foot down. Everybody's buying all the jerk baits. When it comes to jerk baiting in less than 6 foot of water, everybody has a mixed stick on. Mixed stick comes out with some deeper diving. Then the minnow comes out. Now all of a sudden it's, I can't believe why were we throwing these jerk baits? You can put a minnow, however, 20, 30, 40 foot down. Now it's back to, my God, no one's ever going to buy, a jerk bait again. Now it's super situational. I mean, do you feel this roller coaster? I would imagine like your career is tied to these baits. It's a rock crawler, it's a jerk bait, and all of a sudden you've gone through a number of different transitions where it's like, oh, your stuff's not irrelevant, and then it comes back up, and then it's at the very high, and now it's at the very. Am I somewhat on base here, Mike?
No, you really are, and I guess that when you say go from 2017 to the current, that is one of those things that is. I guess one reason I'm still convinced that I can catch them on a rock crawler and a jerkbait, and I can, It's just, can you compete with those guys that are out there throwing a minnow? And the thing about it, it's interesting, Matt, there for a few years, a rock crawler sales had really exceeded a jerkbait. And then when forward-facing sonar and the craze of catching them on a jerkbait with forward-facing sonar came around, then the McStick sales jumped back up. And I still think, the evolution of that is going to continue to be, it's going to be tidal. I mean, you're going to have your ups and downs. You're going to see periods where they are caught deeper, but we're going to have things that Mother Nature does that changes that. I mean, you get a little bit of high water and a little bit of colored water, and all of a sudden things change. It's back to the jerk baits and the crankbaits. So it's interesting how this has all changed. Again, I was very concerned when the A-rig first hit that, man, it was just going to kill jerkbait sales, and it slowed them down a little bit. But, time is taking care of itself. The tournament organizations, some have made rule variations and changes. And I think that's what we've seen, Major League Fishing do this year. NPFL, we've got one circuit out there that's not allowing any forward-facing sonar. Those guys are going to be forced to fish with more of the traditional baits that, I currently would love to see sell. And then you've got Major League Fishing. Those guys are going to get a period of forward-facing sonar, and then they're going to fish traditionally for a couple periods. So it's going to be interesting to see where it all lands. The opportunities continue to be there. Like I said earlier, I mean, I catch a bunch of fish using live scope and throwing a rock crawler. I don't throw a rock crawler down banks very often without looking for either fish or targets to throw that rock crawler at. And that's the thing that people got to learn is the traditional baits will still catch them. You just got to use your technology to give you the biggest advantage to utilize them.
Break down your what's under the lid of your boat in 2025 for the spring. Not necessarily where you're going, but just in general, that area that you live on. What percent is jerk baits, A-rigs, swim baits, minnows, rock crawlers? Like what would you say the percentage distribution is in your tackle storage?
Well, and I'm going to have to say, I've always been pretty, I say relatively simple. I don't know what normal guys do, but, I carry a box of baits that are tuned and ready to throw. And then I carry, a spare couple of baits in about every color in my boat. I still carry, either the Spro zipper bags or, baits that are not out of packages in hefty bags, things of that nature. But I will say that, my jig heads and minnows is probably taking up more space in my boat than ever. As far as jerk baits, I mean, I've got my 4 boxes of rock crawlers. I've got, my 50, my 55, my MDs and my DD50s. So I've got 4 boxes of rock crawlers. I've got a couple boxes of McSticks. I really do think that a person can simplify it so much in the spring. I still carry a fair number of little brown jigs. I mean, I've had a ton of success early in the spring when conditions aren't right to catch them out there using forward-facing sonar, getting up there on the bank and throwing a little brown jig around. So, that's kind of where my head is. I think I've got to keep it simple. I've got to commit to, figuring out, is this going to be a forward-facing sonar event, or can I fish traditionally some in this event and compete? And I'm probably the world's worst at feeling like I've got to have a little bit of everything in my boat. I mean, there's so many guys that really, really simplify it. And man, I'm that guy that still carries way too much. I just keep thinking, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I'm sitting here looking out the window and I'm seeing gulls dive out here in the lake out here in front of the house. It's like I feel like I need to be out there throwing a minnow right now.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you enjoy that? Do you believe there's nuances to it? Like like you said, we started in 2017. Now we're in 2025. What are your thoughts on just that as a technique in itself and mastering the minnow?
The whole thing about it. And when you say mastering the minnow, I mean, I lean more towards the swimmers and underspins and things of that nature more so than I do the minnow style baits. And I know I've got to get better at that. I mean, I throw a big bite jerk minnow and jointed jerk minnow a lot. And I know I've got to get better at that technique, because there definitely are some nuances with, some of these new minnow style baits. The variations in all these tails and the way these baits move in the water is definitely opening our eyes up to these fish. And again, I keep going back to the fact, and I've said it for years with new colors of rock crawlers and McSticks, these fish get conditioned to seeing the same things. And I really believe every time we see something new, something a little bit different, that's kind of the bandwagon you have to jump on. And, I promise you here, probably this year somewhere, somebody's going to catch them on a jerkbait using forward-facing sonar and win a tournament. It's just everybody is so hung up on this minnow right now. These fish are seeing lots of minnows, and somebody's going to sneak up and catch them doing something.
How long does this last, Mike? Like, just from a fish biology. So let's say everyone cranks OG warts on table rock on 45-degree banks every single spring for 10 springs. And then when the rock crawler came out, or use any bait that you want. Let's use the rock crawler though. A little bit different colors, a little bit different sound, more consistent action. Oh my gosh, they're eating the rock crawler. Are those fish that would have eaten the OG wart then, that eat the rock crawler? Then everyone throws the rock. Like, what is your belief as far as like the cyclical conditioning of a population of fish? Like, will they be smoking a rock crawler in 2 or 3 years because everybody's minnowing and they're like, oh my God, it's a minnow?
Well, to a degree, yeah, I do believe that you're going to see some fun. And it's not that they're not biting a rock crawler right now. I mean, Matt, last spring was a phenomenal spring here on Table Rock to catch 13 to 15 pounds on a rock crawler daily. But to be competitive in the events that we fished, you better be catching 20 or better. I mean, you look back at the results of Table Rock last spring, it took 30-78 to win an event that I fished. It took
like Falcon
26 something
Falcon Lake weight.
And it's like, yeah, I could go catch 13 to 15, maybe 18 on a good day cranking and have a blast doing it. But to be able to compete, you have to get over that 20-pound mark. And it isn't that fish haven't quit biting a jerkbait and a crankbait. It's just you've got to do what it is that you've got to do to be able to compete on the given day you're fishing.
So it's interesting. Jacob Wheeler, I had him on last year. He believes that the peak of the minnow is 2 years away, and then it's going to go like this, and then it'll start coming down like this, and then the quote unquote traditional will then catch back up to it slightly to where it won't be as dramatic. But he believes right now it's on the upswing. It's about to peak. The minnow's going to start going back down strictly because of conditioning, fishing pressure, and those fish are going to understand. Like, I mean, I know we give them too much credit, like they have like cognitive thought, but you know what I mean, dude, you cast a minnow to some fish at Table Rock, you will think they have cognitive thought and a complex communication system like an orca whale that says, hey, we got a jointed minnow down here on a quarter ounce head.
It's funny you said that, Matt, because I talked to some of the guides here locally just to kind of keep up with, what's going on. Pete Winters and Bill Babler and, Cody Spitz, a few other guides on the lake. And it is amazing to me, the guides this fall that talked about how incredible the minnow bite was. And then just recently I talked to was Bill Babler, and he's like, I went back in, such and such a creek and I caught him okay. But he's like, I bet 8 out of 10 of the fish I caught had hook marks in them. I mean, Matt, it's not like, there are a lot of people that have picked up on this technique. There's a lot of people that have figured out how to do it now. And I'm not sure that Jacob might not be a year behind. I mean, especially from the pressure I see Table Rock get. Now, other lakes around the country may be a little bit different. But Table Rock, I really believe that these fish are getting educated so fast that it is going to be tougher to catch them and win that way in the next year. I believe that. And we saw it all. Pete Winters and Brian Snowden won the OMTT championship, or it wasn't the OMTT, it was the championship here on Table Rock this fall, catching them in a traditional manner. And there was a bunch of good minnow fishermen.
I was curious about how they were doing that, because I know both Brian Snowden, Chad Morgan, that whole group, early adopters of it. They do a lot of the stuff going back to the Panoptics days. Pete, legendary guide on Table Rock, really great dude. I know I've recommended a couple individuals who said, "Hey, we're going to be on Table Rock. Who should we go out with?" And I've sent them Pete's way, and literally they've said, "Thank you for that recommendation. It was the greatest day I've ever had on the water. It was so much fun. Awesome working with my wife. She caught her PB largemouth and spotted bass, and we caught 17 pounds, and we minnowed, and we cranked, and we did all sorts of different stuff." But I was curious when I saw that they'd won that, if that's Pete Bryan standing on the front deck scoping with probably 70 years of Table Rock experience behind him, or if they went and did something a little bit sneakier.
Well, and, I'm not going to sit here and tell you they never caught a bass scoping. I mean, everybody kind of keeps some of their secrets to themselves, but I do know that they caught a lot of the fish they caught traditionally. And it was cool to see that go down that weekend. I mean, the first day they were just kind of, I don't even know that they were, in the top 10, honestly. I can't remember how it laid out, but they caught a monster bag on day 2. And, the scopers got behind on day 2.
Yeah, you mentioned LBJ a little bit, which is obviously the dude. You have to put Justin in the top 5 LBJ fishermen in the Ozarks right now. Like name. There's no. I can't think. I mean, there's some legendary LBJ guys. If I was to do a list of guys that are good with a jig in the Ozark region right now, specifically that technique, Justin's in the top 5. That's fishing right now. Gets going right now.
There's no denying that. And I mean, he's an incredible scoper, but when it comes to fishing, the lakes around here that aren't as prone to be one scoping, he's solid. I mean, I had the opportunity to jump in the boat and sub for his normal partner this year at Grand Lake, and we won a Nichols event, primarily throwing a jig. We mixed in a big bite fighting frog and a couple other baits during the course of the day, but we primarily caught everything we caught that day on a little brown jig, and it was pretty incredible to see how he has progressed, through the years of his abilities. And man, I'm proud of him and what he's accomplished, and the fact that he's still fishing around here and having success, but he's out there doing a job he loves to do. Involved as a sales manager, Beat Down Outdoors now, and working for the Outdoor Brands team. It's just cool to see what he's got going on.
His confidence with the LBJ right now is the same as your confidence with a 3/4 ounce football jig in 2006.
No, absolutely. You couldn't get that jig out of my hand. I mean, I remember the times when you and Mark and Dave were covering the events on the water, you would show up on me, you'd be like, "You're throwing that here?" And it's just like, It is when you get the confidence and you've got things rolling in your favor. I mean, Justin picks that little brown jig up and can catch him day in, day out somewhere on the lake.
What was that exact jig? 3/4 ounce Jewel PB&J?
Yeah, it would have been a PB&J or a PB&J smoke. I really like the PB&J smoke.
Little gray in it.
Yeah, it had a little bit of smoke in it.
Full skirt.
Yep. Full skirt. Well, that bounced back and forth depending on the fishery we were on. If we were on a largemouth fishery that they wanted a bigger, bulkier bait, it was generally a full skirt. But, when you came to these lakes that had smallmouth or spotted bass in it, I typically cut it down to more of a spidery looking skirt.
Now you had a secret trailer that you like to use that you weren't keen on talking about. Are you cool like mentioning that, or do you want to just
I mean, there for a long time I utilized it. And I think, are you talking about a creature style bait?
No. You threw the stick bait on the back.
Oh, you're talking that one. Yeah, I mean, we can visit that. No, there was an event, and a lot of people over the years, Jeff Crete won, he was tremendous throwing a Yamamoto or a Senko of some kind. I mean, I don't remember early on, it was probably Yamamoto, but I just never could wait for that weightless bait to get to the bottom. And one day we were at Lake Amistad and I started playing with putting a 5-inch, it was just a big bite trick stick on the back of a 3/4 ounce football jig. And man, they ate it like candy.
Like a giant Ned.
Yeah, it was basically a giant Ned, a mag Ned rig. And it's interesting to see, I still pull it out every now and then. I caught fish flipping a jig with a trick stick on the back of it. It's pretty interesting when they want that profile, how dialed in they can truly get to a stick on a jig.
And then your day in and day out trailer.
Day in, day out. I mean, it's typically, and it varies, man. I mean, a fighting frog is still a trailer I throw a lot on a jig. A lot of guys don't utilize a fighting frog on a jig. You kind of got to be crafty in how you actually put the trailer on the jig. A college craw, a kamikaze craw, and I utilize my my battle bug quite a bit, but it's a little bulkier than I want it to be for certain situations. So I just basically clip the tentacles off of it when I want to make it a little bit more compact.
I was just down in Mexico, and there's certain flats there where there's just fish everywhere, and you catch them on whatever you want. So you get tired of catching them on a swim bait or a top water or a rattle trap. So I was bringing a couple 1 ounce football heads. Well, there's no crayfish in El Salto. So
Really?
you're imitating a juvenile tilapia, basically. Dude, a 1 ounce football head on 25-pound test, 7.6 extra heavy rod, and you thread a full-size brush hog on the back of that thing. It's like a 7.5-inch freaking jig. Yeah. When you pull it, it feels like it feels like you've got a leaf on it every single time. And you pull it up, and that thing's falling, and it literally just goes, "Don't!" It's the craziest, hardest jig bite ever. And it's anywhere from a 2-pounder to an 8-pounder. The best football jig bite I've ever had in my entire life.
And that's the thing that, we set up here and we talk about this forward-facing sonar stuff and how dominant it is in tournament competition. But day in, day out, there are still a lot of guys out here going to Mexico, fishing lakes across the country that aren't utilizing forward-facing sonar, and they're still being successful in catching a ton of fish on traditional style baits. That's all there is to it.
What else you got?
That's about it. I mean, I'm just looking forward to getting the New Year's kicked off. It's just crazy that we're leaving this Thursday, trying to get ahead of the potential next little weather pattern rolling through here. I mean, I'm still looking at completely snow-covered ground around the house here, and I'm just ready to get after it, man. It's been a short but a long winter, and I'm always excited to get the new year started. I mean, I've been thinking about Clark's Hill, and won there back in 2008, I believe, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we were going there a little different time of the year, but it's going to be pretty cool to go to Clark's Hill and see what we can put together.
Oh yeah, you'll be out of there by the time all that. I'm looking at it here, like 15, 13, and 10 are the lows next Saturday, the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th. Windy as all get out, highs in the 20s. Not ideal.
Yeah. Hopefully we get out of town well ahead of that, and hopefully that doesn't push down to Clark's Hill next week in Georgia. That's the big hope.
Oh yeah, that could be an interesting one. All right, Mike. Thank you for the time. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Make sure to check out Mike's social media, Mike McClelland, Facebook, Instagram.
And be sure to follow the Spro YouTube page as the season gets progressing.
Will do. I'll see you at Toledo Bet or Sam Rayburn.
Yep, we will be there in just a few weeks, buddy.
All right, later.
Have a good one.
All right, the one and only Mike McClelland. All right, I think we're just going to wrap it up today. There's some other stuff that's on my radar. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. Maybe we won't. Kind of depends on what I'm able to figure out for the remainder of the day. All right, this has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. So tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the water, Scott Palmer from the Bass Tank setting up my electronics. They just installed it. Everything's good. It's just a basic one unit. He said, hey, let's get on the water. We'll dial it in like we do every single year. And I pulled a Bill O'Reilly and I said, we'll do it live. So We should have good weather. That's the reason why I'm doing it not traditionally at 8:30 a.m. is because tomorrow morning it's going to be 27 degrees. By noon, it's supposed to be up to 50. Low wind, sun. We're going to go out to Shawnee Twin right here. Good cell signal. We've done it before. We actually got blown off with a tornado last time. But Scott Palmer is going to be in. We're going to go through the settings, how I set it up. I have not seen the new unit or the deucer yet. Walk through all that stuff to help you guys get it set up, because trust me, if I can get it set up and keep it that way for the year, so can you. This has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, 11 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. Scott Palmer, we will talk to you then. See ya.